when the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. But just because the song says that it's love doesn't necessarily mean that it is. Hello, people of Earth and beyond. A warm welcome to all of my Trafalmadorian friends out there. If you're new to my channel, my name is Shannon, and today I'm going to be talking about something that I don't really like talking about a whole lot, but I decided to do it anyway. Romance! I am not a romance person. I will not read a book where romance is the main focus of the story. Like, it takes a lot for me to get interested in a book that is mostly romance. That being said, I have read some books that actually have some really good, healthy relationships over the years. And so today, I thought that I'd share with you my top 3 best romantic relationships in books and my top 3 worst, because I've read some pretty bad ones too. Obviously, I'm only going to be talking about books that I've actually read, so if your favorite series isn't in here, there's a strong possibility that I haven't read it. This is, of course, going to be based pretty much on my opinion, but I'm going to be having some evidence to back up why I think a relationship was bad or good in the book. So, let's get started. Let's start off on a positive note with the 3 best romances that I've ever read in books. This was the harder of the 2 lists to put together because it's easy to know when a relationship is bad, but it's harder for it to stand out when it's good. So these 3, I think, they really do stand out, but just, it was hard to come up with them. And I just want to really briefly point something out before I talk about these couples, because when I was compiling this, as I said, it was kind of challenging for me. When I was coming up for the criteria for this video, one of the things I decided was that the romance did not have to be between the main character and another character. It could be a side character, but in looking back at all the books I'd read, I'd realized that none of the side character relationships really stood out to me because they just, there wasn't enough time spent with them or whatever. All of these are going to be main characters, but that's not to say that side character relationships aren't good, it's just that they aren't usually as developed as the main character's relationship, so I just don't feel about them as strongly. So, we're going to start off with number 3 of the healthy relationships, and that's going to be Will and Alice from the Ranger's Apprentice series. One of the things that I love about Ranger's Apprentice is that it takes place over a long span of time. Like, we spend a couple books with Will when he is 15, 16-ish, and then it skips a couple years and we spend time with him as he's a young adult, and then more time with him as he's a slightly older adult, and so we really get to see him change, grow over the span of time. And I think that works really well for his relationship with Alice. They grow up together, they're in the ward together, and so they start out as friends, and a little bit of romance is hinted at in the first book, but it's not really explored until more like the 5th book, I believe. Yeah, the 5th book is The Sorcerer of the North, and that's when they really start exploring the romance more. So I like that it's there in the background, but that it takes time to develop with the characters. And then in the 5th and 6th books, it's really expounded upon as Will and Alice have to face danger together, which is something they haven't really done before. And in these 2 books, I don't know in the 5th one, that's why I'm not holding it up, but in these 2 books, they really just kind of have to fight together for the first time and go out of their way to defend each other, and it's really lovely. Their roles in society are really good together. Like, couriers and rangers work together a lot, and so that allows for Will and Alice to kind of come together. Moving on to number 2, which is going to be Creel and Luca from the Dragon Slippers trilogy. This trilogy definitely doesn't get the love that it deserves. It's amazing, but not very well known. And I think it does kind of start off as middle grade, but the other two books I would consider more high school age, maybe even young adult. Anyway, what really makes me appreciate Creel and Luca now is as an older reader than I was when I first read the series, I realize what their relationship could have been. Luca is a prince and Creel is a commoner, and Creel realizes in book two actually that there's probably no way that she and Luca could ever be together, even though she's realizing that she has feelings for him at that point. And so this could have taken an entirely different route where she threw everything into the wind and pursued her own feelings, but instead she kind of just accepts it. And this does two things. It ensures that the main focus of the story stays on the fact that they are fighting wars with dragons, and it also ensures that Creel and Luca aren't like sneaking around behind closed doors, which I feel like is really not the best setup for a relationship. And it also allows for their relationship to be very organic as they are dealing with things, the events of the book, with the dragons, and just having to deal with those, and they're not trying to let romance get in the way, and until, well, not even until, eventually Luca tells Creel that he can actually get married to whomever he chooses, and it all works out fine. I think they're both incredibly mature about it, and I love the fact that Creel is a strong character on her own, of course, and Luca is too, but it really, a lot of this story focuses on how strong Creel is in different respects. She's just a very independent person making her own way in the world, and there's a lot of room for her to do that. And so, of course, when you have a strong, independent character, they're a good character to have a relationship with in the story. And although just rereading this recently because I wanted to revisit this world, I realized that Luca is pretty smitten with Creel probably from the beginning. It feels very natural. Like, she treats him as a friend at first, and they have a lot of kind of back and forth banter, and so it makes their relationship very organic. And like I said, they are both very mature about it. And number one, the best romance that I have ever read is, drumroll please, Percy and Annabeth from the Percy Jackson series, and of course continuing on into Heroes of Olympus. This is my best friend's favorite pairing of all time, so shout out to her, and I have to agree, just the way it develops, the way they mature together, oh gosh, it's a thing of beauty. I don't necessarily have any problem with any of the other pairings in Percy Jackson. They're all just either they're in the background, like Clarice and Chris, or in Heroes of Olympus, I feel like we just didn't get enough time with them. Like most fantasy fans, I would presume, I read Percy Jackson back in middle school, and I actually, as I read it, I didn't think about Annabeth and Percy being together at all. Like, I just read and I was like, okay, they're friends. And my sister did kind of spoil it for me a little bit by telling me about, basically, it was the best underwater kiss ever before I actually read that part. But even then, I didn't think about it. I just kept reading and enjoying them. And I'm actually really appreciative of that, because that's how I like a relationship to build. Percy and Annabeth's development is just so good, both as characters and both as a relationship, because they start off kind of not really liking each other, and then they work together and become friends, and I at least didn't necessarily expect them to end up together. I didn't really think about it, but you just don't think of them as a couple until they actually grow up a little bit and start really caring for each other, but I love the fact that they care for each other as friends first, and of course their missions, their quests always come first. Something that is truly beautiful about Percy and Annabeth is how devastated they are at the thought of losing each other before they're even dating. Like they're so close, especially in the third book is the one I'm specifically thinking of. But just when that Percy thinks he's lost Annabeth, or when he thinks he's going to lose her to the Hunters of Artemis, he's just so devastated at the thought, and it's not even in a romantic way. It's not him realizing he has feelings for her, it's just realizing that he cares about her at all. And of course, once they actually begin a romantic relationship and are in Heroes of Olympus, we see them constantly caring about each other, still caring about saving the world, but also just doing everything to be together and to care for each other, and it is just so, so precious. Again, they kind of grow up together, not from like children to adult, but their coming of age time, it starts in The Lightning Thief, and they just mature together and go through so much together, and it brings them closer, and it's really character development and relationship development done right, and this is one of the reasons I appreciate Rick Riordan so much, because he knows what he's doing when it comes to character development. Alright, let's look at some bad examples of romance. I know that there are a lot of examples of unhealthy relationships in fiction nowadays, which makes me so disappointed in the human race. But I'm just going to focus on ones that I've read that don't scream healthy to me. Again, these are all pretty much main characters, because even if a side character romance isn't fleshed out, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. So these are the ones that really struck me as just not being good, being healthy. There's no other way I can say that, is that just they're not healthy. In other words, none of these are going to be abusive relationships, because everyone should just automatically know that those are bad, right? Yeah, no, these are just the ones that either the characters didn't really develop enough to be in a good relationship, or they just, it had some kind of flaw. It wasn't written well, or they were just bad for each other. Alright, so number 3 is going to be Tyler Jones and Kat from Aurora Rising. I did a review of this book on my channel, and I liked it, but the more I think about it, the more I kind of notice things that were a little bit problematic just with the plot and some of the elements of it. I still would enjoy reading it, but there are some things that I think could have been changed and would have made the book better. But if you've seen my review, you know that I ranted about how much I hate Tyler Jones and how Kat doesn't really connect with me either. And I'm going to talk about their relationship today. I'm going to try not to base it on the fact that I don't like either character, because that's not really fair. But objectively, I think that their romantic relationship just didn't work, or at least wasn't written well. Now, Kat and Tyler have a similar thing going as to my top 3 best, in that they were friends first before lovers, and they've been friends since childhood, but it doesn't work for them. Obviously, I love this trope, but it doesn't work, I think, for one main reason. If you've seen my review, you can probably already guess what it is, and it's the fact that almost all of Kat's identity is wrapped up in loving Tyler. It's infuriating to me, actually, to think about this, because they tried to make her such a strong and defined character, and it didn't work, because she kept going back to, being in love with Tyler. And so she wasn't a strong character on her own. There's also the fact that Tyler doesn't have any feelings for her until the end, so their relationship doesn't develop. Like, they mention one romantic night that they had together, and then just the rest of the time, he's completely focused on everything else. And again, I don't like romance to be the focus of the story. I don't mind if the characters are focused on other things. However, if they're going to end up with someone, there needs to be a little bit of acknowledgement that they actually like this person. It was very one-sided until the end, and then at the end it kind of developed too quickly. And they obviously had issues. They needed to talk about stuff that happened between them, and they didn't. Moving on to number 2, another book that I have reviewed on this channel, The Young Elites. Second worst relationship I've ever read is Enzo and Adelina. This one's a bit unique in this list because it's not Endgame, and boy howdy am I glad. But we're still going to talk about it, and I have ranted a little bit about it, actually in my review of The Rose Society, not The Young Elites. Although I think I mentioned it in my review of this one too. Adelina and Enzo are just not good for each other. In this series, it talks about alignments to different emotions, and they both align to pretty powerful emotions. I think they both align to passion. I'm not sure. But anyway, they both align to pretty powerful and dark emotions. Basically, when they're together, they feed off of one another's energy, and that sounds really weird, and I'm sorry, there's no better way for me to say it, but basically, they have these really strong emotions and energies that are just clashing together, and when you read it, it doesn't sound healthy, and just looking at it objectively, no, it's not. Basically, they clash against each other too strongly, and it actually feels like they're using one another's energy, which is technically lust, not love. See my Rose Society review for more on that. And I am about to make my English high school teacher very mad at me because my number 1 choice for the worst romance pairing I have ever read is Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara from Gone with the Wind. But Shannon, that book is all about the romance. It's a classic. How can you not like it? They're a classic pairing. First of all, like I said, it takes a lot for me to read a book that is mostly about romance. And I actually didn't know that the romance was the main plot of Gone with the Wind before I went into it. I put it in quotations because the main plot is Scarlett's life. Her life just happens to be full of drama. But I didn't know that the main drive for everyone reading it was the romance. I actually didn't know anything about it going in. I actually read it because one of my closest friends said that she hated the main character so much, and I was like, ooh, I have to read this book now. I have to see how bad it is. Second, just because it is a classic love story does not mean that it's a good one. So the first thing with this particular pairing is the fact that Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara are both crappy human beings, so that kind of makes them not good to be in a relationship with. Rhett, I can actually kind of understand because it talks about his past and his relationship with his parents and everything, and so it's like at least you can see where it comes from. Scarlett is terrible for no reason, and I'm not talking just because they're both, you know, Southerners during the Civil War, and Scarlett in particular is a slaveholder. No, they're terrible to the people they consider to be their equals. Rhett just doesn't really have any morals, and Scarlet is just... she's just awful. She keeps saying that she's going to get better, but she doesn't. She's just terrible to everyone and very self-centered. And actually, I would go so far as to say that she's not a well-written character because she doesn't learn anything from the things that she goes through. She literally loses everything, but comes out of it not changed at all. So that's where we start with problematic characters, and then we go on to their problematic romance. When a guy's first indication is that he likes you is asking you to be his mistress, that's a red flag. Rhett can't tell Scarlet that he's in love with her because then she would use it against him and hold it over his head. That's a red flag too! She tells him that she's pregnant and he immediately assumes that she cheated on him. Red flag! And of course, the entire time that they're married until the very, very end, she is completely enamored with someone else. Oh, also there's a scene where he basically sexually assaults her, but since they're married, it's not really considered rape. So yeah. That's it. They're terrible human beings. They are terrible to each other. And I guess, they kind of deserve each other. But as far as I'm concerned, they can both go die in a hole. So that's it! The top 3 best and worst romances that I've ever read. Leave a comment down below telling me what you think the worst or best romance you've ever read is, and if you agree with my choices or not. And if you want to see more videos like this, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and bye.